Tell me a little bit about what's your warrior resume, Willie?
So I did my weekend in December of 2000. I was invited to do it by a client of mine, oddly enough, and it really had a profound impact on me. I didn't expect it to, but it did. About a year later, I started staffing myself. Over the last 21 years, I have staffed 67 weekends. I went through the leadership process, was certified after about 30 trainings. So I've done a lot of those weekends as a certified co-leader. And I've been on sabbatical for the last few years because of the We Are All Homeless project. And so these days when I do a weekend, it's typically in the role of emeritus, a leader emeritus,
Okay.
which is the cushiest gig in MKP, by the way.
Well, you and I go back, I think the first time we met was in 2000 or 2001. You helped me with some questions about creative business. And then you were also on the co-leader on my weekend, as I remember, in 2009.
I remember that.
Yeah, and we've been fast friends ever since.
You've helped us with the documentary for Signs of Humanity. Yeah, I feel like we've had the chance to really engage on all kinds of different levels.
Yeah. So tell me about, how did this sign project start for you?
So back in 1993, I bought the first homeless sign, and it was really, at the time, it was the first time I noticed those signs starting to show up in downtown Dallas. Like a lot of people, I found ways to look away. Felt awkward, I felt uncomfortable. And buying the sign was just this weird way to engage, and it was a way for us to start a conversation. And it immediately changed the dynamic between me and the person that I was buying the sign from. And once I started, I've never stopped. That was 28 years ago.
And how did you work those signs into an art project?
So I think in the back of my head, I had an idea I might use them for something art related, but it wasn't until I started grad school in 2008. So that was a full 16 years later. My mom passed away in 2006. I'm sorry, in 2003. And that was a big seismic shift for me for lots of reasons. But that led me to sell my ad agency in 2006. And went to grad school in 2008, and it was during a class that I started to really formulate this as a project. 2009 was the first exhibit, which happened down in Deep Ellum, and it kind of just took off from there. I didn't really have a vision for, where this might go, but yeah, I remember bringing those signs to class for the first time and having everybody hold them up, and the impact that had on the room.
Yeah. So then you do a TED Talk or two, and you mention about making this trip, and then talk about how that whole thing came about.
Yeah, so it was, I think, a TED Talk from 2012 that I talked about this project, and it was almost an offhand comment that I mentioned I'd really like to travel across the United States and buy signs on the way. And that led to me in 2014 beginning to plan that trip with another warrior brother of ours and my old friend Tim Chumley. And we began to plan a route across the country. We didn't have a really clear idea at that time that this was going to be a feature-length documentary, but a friend of mine named David Kiger, who was involved in an entrepreneurial group of mine, contacted me and said he would fund a good portion of our fundraising if we would make a feature-length documentary. And that's when we added 2 more people to the trip, and in July of 2014 we started in Seattle, went all the way down to San Diego, and ended in New York City.
Wow.
31 very full days of talking to folks on the street and hearing stories.
Well, it was such a treat for me because I got to be the guy back here in Dallas and and hearing about it and seeing the signs coming in and all that, and what an exciting thing that was. And then to actually see the film Signs of Humanity.
Yeah, it took us, Tim and I worked on the editing of that film for about 2 years and finished it in 2016, at least the first version. We did a second version, which is the current version. But yeah, it was amazing. Neither of us had done a feature-length film before, and so we were all of a sudden now dealing with film festivals, and it was an adventure, a huge learning experience for me.
And how many film festivals did you get entered in?
We were accepted into 8 different festivals, one of them in Australia, which of course
Wow.
neither of us were able to attend in person, but we were in festivals in New York, in Chicago, in San Francisco, Dallas, Fort Worth.
What's going on now with We're All Homeless?
So in the last 11 years, I think I just calculated, I've done 60-something exhibits. So that continues. This fall, I'm going to be doing exhibits for sure. The one in Colorado just happened this past weekend. I'll be doing one in New York in October, in Boston in November. Also in November, one up in Denton at the University of North Texas. And there are some others pending. So there's lots of exhibits. I still get invitations to speak about the project to different kinds of groups. Sometimes it's students, professional groups, whatever. And we're also in the process of trying to pitch a docu-series for TV to follow up on the documentary. We have a couple of ideas for other documentaries. I'm working on a book that is taking forever, but making some progress. Over the summer, I did a lot of writing. So there's a lot of other content that I'm in the process of developing. I also, at SMU, where I teach, just met with a bunch of human rights students. And every semester, some of them sign up to volunteer for the nonprofit We Are All Homeless. So we'll be doing a lot of stuff with them this semester as well.
Okay. I know I had a great time helping you put together the layout for the show that got sent to England, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah. We did the same thing for a show that was in Alaska at the beginning of 2020. Because of the time it was going to take to install, we designed it here, laid it all out, photographed it, and boxed it up and sent it over there. Oh, let me tell you one other thing. So
Sure.
we've done a couple of research projects, and by we, I mean primarily this PhD, Rosie Frasso, who's in Philadelphia. We've done a couple of research projects with some of her grad students. 2 articles have been published, one in the I'll never get this right, American Journal of Public Health, and another one, the International Journal of Social Psychiatry. And she and I and a couple other folks at Jefferson University in Philly are also working right now on a research project coming up in the spring. So we'll be doing that, and hopefully it'll be both in Philly and in Dallas. I'm not a researcher, by the way, so this is super cool just to be around people who like research.
Yeah. So people can go to Amazon Prime and see the film Signs of Humanity, and I highly recommend it. It really is. One thing that I take away from it is what I saw was it gave Willie an opportunity to sit down with the people behind the signs and have real lengthy conversations, and you can see several of those on the film. So Willie, the question I have is, what do you see as the main cause of homelessness in the United States?
So that's actually a really poignant question, and the real answer is that there are so many different causes, and I think that's what a lot of people aren't aware of, because it's easy to want to simplify issues like this. But there are people on the streets because they're fleeing domestic violence. That's primarily women and children. There are young people who have come out to their families as gay or lesbian and are kicked out onto the streets. There are a third of the people on the streets are dealing with issues involving mental illness, PTSD, addiction. There are veterans. 11% or so of the people on the streets are veterans who often are dealing with PTSD or other issues that may not be getting handled by the VA. And then there's health issues, people's spouses dying, people having a health crisis that causes them to deplete all of their savings. And it's hard to categorize any one cause.
Yeah.
But and for that reason, I think the solution is also multi-pronged. There are a lot of people working in different areas to touch on job training, dental care, medical attention, education, all those things.
So, which leads me to ask, what can the people watching this, what would you like to see them do in regard to homelessness?
Well, the first basic thing I would say is to see the people that you pass by on the street, regardless of whether you give money or anything else to them. A smile, eye contact, acknowledging their humanity is huge. Beyond that, I think there are tons of ways to volunteer. If you're interested in our nonprofit, We Are All Homeless, our goal is to spread awareness and compassion, and we do that by talking to the housed. My audience is people like you and me, because I'm trying to get people to just become more aware of the fact that these are human beings that have very unique stories. I think there are, in every city across this country, there are various organizations doing things to help homelessness. Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of ways to get involved. One of the things we do here at school, we organize events where we make blessing bags with various things that are helpful for people on the streets. And we give those away for students to keep in their cars or their backpacks. You know, it's a simple thing, but for some people, they really like to give out things to people that are needed.
Yep. Okay, so to wrap this up, to get to know Willie a little bit better, we're going to do a Willie Baronet quickfire.
Oh, man.
So
Should I be nervous?
This is one of those things that first reaction, spit it out.
Spit it out.
Signs.
Humanity.
Mustang.
Pony up.
Sports.
Basketball.
Artichokes.
Hearts.
Eddie Dunn.
Angel.
Favorite music.
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
NWTA.
Changed my life.
Art.
Everywhere.
Tanya.
Love of my life.
Favorite pie.
Coconut cream. Followed closely by pecan.
And what is home to you?
Home is and always will be the sound of my mother's voice, the smell of her cooking, which thankfully I've got a couple of sisters who come close. It's the laughter of my friends. It's buying the homo sign. It's a good sketchbook and a good pen. Home is being in the classroom and seeing my students light up. You're going to make me cry if I keep going.
Willie, thanks for being here. Thanks for doing this, my brother.
I love you, man.
I love you.
Thank you.
Take care.